Definitely the frequency as well as the severity, right? Severity of the disasters are higher and higher. And I mean, we've been talking about the 100-year floods that are occurring much more often than every 100 years. It's definitely straining resources, and most local governments are not equipped to help recover and to rebuild the communities. I hope that we can eventually get to a point where we're not just reacting to disasters, but also hardening infrastructure, increasing our individual assistance, and especially be able to be much more resilient to future disasters.
This is a global issue, but as everybody knows, for us in Hawaii, we had the unfortunate tragedy in Lahaina in Maui, but because there's so many things going on across the world, it's been so difficult. And especially here in Hawaii, we have a unique challenge as well. We're in the epicenter of the Pacific Ocean. And so on top of the frequency, we also have the geography issue, because anything has to be shipped in or flown in, or the same thing, all of our waste has to be shipped out. And so it's been a really difficult recovery effort for us here in Hawaii.
The short answer is no. And part of it is because most disasters, they do not qualify for FEMA assistance. And most of the assistance is on a reimbursement basis, which could take years. And that, as you can imagine, compounds the problems for the states and local governments trying to recover from disasters. And so, but there's hope. There's specific grants. They do require 25% state match and certain conditions. For instance, we in Washington State are using 3 grants right now: the Fire Management Assistance Grant from FEMA.
It really is a balancing act. We need that federal assistance and to fill the gaps as necessary, but really the states need to be more resilient, as we saw here in Hawaii, that we needed to be able to respond quicker ourselves because we're so geographically isolated. It took a long time for FEMA to be deployed, as quick as they could possibly do it, but it still took a long time. But also, there's the promise of $700, and many people go, I've still never seen that money. So a lot of times the federal aid comes in to different government agencies, but we need to work on that trickle-down effect so it actually helps the families that are affected.
Our policies at the state level, and if I think being able to mitigate the losses and the amount, the amount and the loss amounts, because there's no magic about insurance, right? We are basically hedging against our losses, and if we happen to be subjected to either natural or man-made disasters, then hopefully we are made whole as much as possible, just in case.
Insurance is a global market and usually unaffected by local changes. However, we've seen in the past the state really can become an actor in the private insurance sector when there are these big catastrophic events. Here in Hawaii, after the Maui wildfires, we are having a huge homeowner insurance issue, a condo insurance issue. We just had a big town hall in my district because so many of those in my community, their homeowners insurance and their condo insurance is going up by 300% for some of them. And especially here in Hawaii, when people really are living paycheck to paycheck, our cost of living is one of the most difficult in the entire country. Any changes to homeowner insurance makes a big impact on our communities. And this is going to be one of the top issues going into the 2025 session, is addressing the homeowners insurance issue, especially after a big disaster.
Yes, having been an insurance agent before, I absolutely believe so, and they should. I believe that thoughtful data-based disaster resilience policies should lead to mitigating and reducing risks much more. And that will hopefully, especially for Washington State, we will keep our property and casualty market attractive to insurance companies, which it is right now.
Unfortunately, it's difficult to ensure that any reduced risk translates to consumer benefit through lower premiums. Insurance carriers often don't have the capacity to factor in state policies and mitigation measures. And so, a state entity can be more easily reduce these premiums, but these things are really, these factors are really based for a nationwide company. And so being in such a small state, we often go, what role do we play in the larger picture?
We'd love to have the assistance dollars up front. And we'd love to be able to use the assistance dollars to not just rebuild, but also to mitigate and to reduce risks for the future. And of course, always more funding would be fantastic.
I think the thing that I hear most, especially after the Maui wildfires for the federal government, is really cutting the red tape and streamlining the grants. So often we heard back, it's so difficult to tap into some of that disaster relief and some of those recovery funds. And so making it a lot easier to navigate that system is something that I think would be extremely helpful.
No, unfortunately, we're not. Washington State, we have a population of 8 million people, and we have under 100 FTEs to plan, to provide technical support, and to help manage disasters. So absolutely no. And so, yeah, we absolutely have to be better resourced for any, especially co-occurring incidences.
So we've had some unique challenges in the last few years. We had the Red Hill water crisis, where there was a massive oil spill into our aquifer, where people had their faucets and they were lighting it and it was lighting on fire. And this is something that didn't just affect one community, it affects the entire state. And so that would be a case where I said, we are not sufficiently prepared for the disasters that hit something like Red Hill, where we're still working on the cleanup of Red Hill. And that was something that people were saying for years, and especially in the months ahead, that this is a impending disaster. This is something that is going to happen. People knew that there were issues with Red Hill, and yet nothing was done. And so there's definitely more that we can be doing. And when it comes to the Lahaina wildfires, I think something that was really unique that we saw there is, in this day and age, one of the biggest issues was really the technological failure. We saw, when the grid went down, when there wasn't enough pressure for the hydrants, nobody could communicate because the cell towers were down. For days, weeks after the fire happened, people still weren't able to communicate out. They didn't know what happened to their house. For the longest time, we couldn't even count and keep track of how many people were still alive, who was still missing, because of those technological issues of not being able to communicate. And so we have learned a lot from that issue. There's so much more that we need to do. In 2024, our electric company is focusing on hardening the grid. There's so many different steps we can take. And in any disaster, when you look back, there's always human error, but there's always more that we can do to prepare.